What's good, y'all? It's your sis Dobijoki Emanuela, and you are tuned in to You Are Power Radio on Dobijoki TV, a platform where guests own their power by telling their stories. Today I have a special guest by the name of Spin El Poeta. I want you to listen to the interview all the way through. He drops way too many gems, he tells us about the power within his story, and so at the end I want you to thumbs up, like, subscribe, share it with all of your networks, and continue to tell your story. Peace. Okay. Welcome to You Are Power Radio with Dobijoki Emanuela, and I'm here with a special guest today. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Spin El Poeta is the artistic name. Luis Eduardo Mexicano is the name my mother gave me. I'm a spoken word artist, youth advocate, keeper at the Mayan Cosmovision, former Guatemalan refugee, former at-risk youth. Just community worker at heart, and a poet who strives to live by his lyrics. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So you mentioned a lot.
Yeah.
And I met you because I came to this spot here. You were having like an open mic, and I listened to the beautiful poets that were in this space, and I learned that you were organizing.
Yeah.
How long have you been organizing these type of events and been involved with poetry?
So I've been a spoken word artist for like 17, 18 years. I was organizing a lot of shows earlier on, and then I went through a number of like challenges, health scares and whatnot, and it kind of took me out of organizing altogether. I also, I was afflicted, I would say, by toxic masculinity, which caused me to cause a lot of pain in the lives of women that I loved at the time, and that caused me also to withdraw and reflect from everything, because after being not accountable to a lot of people, I decided to start to look within as to what the causes of it was. And I firmly believe part of the reason I went through the illness, through the cancer, was just, God getting me to really reflect on the toxic masculinity and start to make some changes in my life. So I kind of disappeared from the scene for a while. And then when I came back in, I had, all the artist insecurities that people normally have, but like times two, because I've been there, been the flavor of the month, disappeared, and I had to start from scratch. So I started back in earnest, I'd say about 5 years ago, and I started running the series 2016. I started running it out of St. Clair and Bathurst. The QP has a teacher's assistants, QP 4400 local that they have over there, education support workers. And we started running it out of there. And then I found this place, Centro Cultural Latinoamericano, and it just felt like home. And so, by the time you came out, and she crushed it, by the way, she crushed the open mic,
Stop it.
that was probably, I think, in its second run. It was earlier this year, no?
Oh, yeah, it was in April.
Yeah. So this is the third season, and it was the second season here. So I had run like a full season last year.
Okay.
And just really appreciated the space, and so we continued it. Yeah. So long-winded answer.
No. Okay, so you mentioned a lot. Your personal story in terms of been doing this work, been a spoken word artist, gone through some stuff with your personal life, disappear, come back and having to start all over again, and the challenges in doing that. There's many young people out here who have to stop what they're doing and kind of reevaluate life. What kind of advice can you give to somebody about pushing and continuing to do the work? Because the way you do your poetry, I'm just really inspired, because I'm like, damn, I wish I could write in that way and have the same passion. Stop, no, but when I saw you on stage and telling your story, right, like, I wish I could use that same passion. So what can you tell someone who's struggling to get back into whatever it is that they're doing?
I think, I have my mind out there within my birthright, which is Ahmak. It's important to take small steps. And I think we want everything too quickly, especially in this society of instant gratification. So start small and start humble, and make sure your heart is in the right place, and then be consistent. So like my first show was like 10 people, all of us just looking at each other. And then I just kept running it, and it's like my brother Randall got Raz, and it's huge out in Malvern. They moved down to Bloor and Bathurst, and it's huge down there. And so when I started my series, I knew that it wasn't gonna be like that at the moment, and I had to start my path and follow it. So I think for anybody that's doing this, just make sure your heart is in the right place. The whole intention for my series is to bring indigenous, Latin American, and African diaspora artists together and communities for us to learn from one another. And that's really it. So everything I've done in the last 3 years has been bringing artists from all these communities together. I lose money, I don't make money from it. One of my homies once taught me, he said, ignorant people know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. So the show cost me $300 to $450 a month, but the value of it is incredible. Like the magic that we've had in these spaces, you know, is incredible. So I would say, like, just make sure your intentions are pure, you know, make sure your heart is clean. I know for me, Creator took me out of the scene because it all started getting to my ego. Like as an artist, it's very easy to get gassed and start doing these things for the wrong reasons. And so I feel like I was disrespecting the gift that Creator bestowed upon me. And when I came back in again, I took it a lot more serious. There's a lot of people out here that don't like me, but I don't care. Like, my heart is clean.
Yeah, exactly.
So as long as you keep your clean heart, you persevere, you start small, you don't put excessive pressure on yourself. And then it's about longevity, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you know, bringing indigenous, Black, and Latin American people together. What's the importance of that for you?
For me specifically, is because our culture is Latin American. Those are the three key groups. Is the African diaspora that we have, like the biggest African diaspora outside of the continent is in Brazil. All our countries in Central and South America have African populations. The Olmec civilization, you know, prehistoric indigenous civilizations in our countries, you can see the features. And so we have that presence, and we also obviously have the indigenous presence. And there's a lot of internalized racism among my people. I mean, just from the simple fact we call ourselves Spanish, you know, World Cup, we out there with the Spain flags, like, yeah, like we won. Like, nah, dude, you didn't win, man. They deporting us over there. They don't care about us.
No, yeah.
You know, so it's like I feel that in America, a number of my people have this, I guess, the Stockholm syndrome, and this identification with Spain. And I always tell people, like, Jamaicans speak English, but they're not English. So we speak Spanish, but we're not Spanish. We have our own culture, we have our own blend. And so for me, it was important to bring us together and just have these sacred spaces where we're learning from one another. Also because I've been blessed up here to have family ties with indigenous people across Turtle Island, and I realized that a lot of people want to develop family ties or friendship but don't know how. And then, like, the Canadian thing to do is to do nothing. You know, so for me it was like, let's create the space and let's have these dialogues. And yeah, I got a whole bunch of family out west, out in Six Nations. I've taken over 1,000 youth out to Six Nations territory over the last decade.
I was going to ask you about that next, because I saw you post. I don't know where you were in particular, but you were with a lot of young indigenous folks.
Oh yeah, that was Bella Bella. That was the Hiltzik people, 14,000-year-old nation out in BC, and mid-BC, mid to northern BC. Territories 55,353 square kilometers.
Wow.
And over 50% of that is water.
Wow.
And so I got my homie Saul Brown out there, and we connected like a decade ago. I was brought out there for an anti-war festival. I went to perform, and then anytime I travel, I want to connect with the people, you know? And out in BC, there's just such a strong, visible indigenous presence. Like, you know, the white people can't hide it. It's there, you know, and they have them on their manners. They got to do their land acknowledgements. They got to pronounce the nations correctly. Yeah. And so I connected with Saul, and I always told him I wanted to visit his territory. And it's like a flying community, or you could take like an 8-hour ferry. But I guess they get a lot of people saying they want to go, but nobody actually makes it. So we put a plan together last year, and I got some funding through the League of Canadian Poets. And I went out there, I booked my flight and everything. He wasn't even sure if I was going to pull it off, and I didn't know nothing about the flight from Vancouver to there cost more than from here to Vancouver.
Imagine.
Yeah.
And that's already expensive.
Yeah, so this one already is expensive. So I did it, and I think there was an appreciation he had as far as, like, seeing that I made that effort to go out there, and I engaged with the babies in the high school. We did some poetry workshops. Elders came down from the tribal council, and I just received so much love. They gave me this year, they call it Wickas, and it was like a gift for protection. Wow. And so I had that connection, and we went back again this year, and I managed to get my sister Valiant Jules. She's a Nuchanoth and Kwakwakiwak nations, and we went out together this year for April, May, and we got to work with the elders in the community that were teaching their language to the babies, so that when they were performing their poem, they could add their language into it. It was such a powerful experience. Wow. So that's the picture I think you saw. I brought out a bunch of one mic shirts. I got them all over the territory there, and that was a very special experience for me.
Okay, so you mentioned, working with the indigenous youth and going out there to a remote location that not a lot of people, visit, or they might say they do and they don't follow through. Why was that important for you to actually follow through?
I just genuinely wanted to be there, and it's such a privilege to know and have a friendship with someone that's on the territory. That's wanting to welcome you in, and then that values your craft as an artist. That was one of the most sweetest experiences for me as a poet. It's cool, we in Toronto, we drop a poem and there's bars and people, whatever, but you're flying out, probably 5 hours to Vancouver, another 2 hours out there, 7 hours from Toronto, and you're getting this love and this appreciation out there from the original people that you're an uninvited guest on their land. It was very important for me, and I think the other part is that we had to leave my country as refugees because the Mayan people of the land where I'm from, went through numerous massacres, 36-year war, over 300,000 dead, over 1 million displaced. My mother and I part of that million. And so ever since we left, I always felt like a sense of responsibility and accountability to indigenous people, wherever I'm in, whatever part of the world I'm in, because they were just wanting to live their way of life, and colonialism, colonizers came in, and American government intervention, and so, for me it was always important, since we had to leave my country, to try to do my part, to build friendship, to be accountable, and to be in solidarity with the original people of the land that I'm on.
I remember when you were doing your poem back in April, you mentioned that you're from Guatemala, but you call it Guatemala.
Guatemala.
Yeah, Guatemala.
Yeah.
Okay, Guatemala, and that's because the original peoples.
So Ishimuleu in Maya Quiche is the name of Guatemala, and that's the land of the earth. If I'm not mistaken. But for me, I just found malo, when something is malo in Spanish, is bad. So Guatemala is guate is bad. And then every country, every Spanish-speaking country that we got has this joke about you left Guatemala to go to Guatepeor, which is you went from bad Guatemala to worse Guatemala. I don't know why these bozos think that joke is funny, but for me, I just felt like, 70-80% of the population is Mayan. We should be calling it Guatemala. And I had a homie that taught me that. And I think Cautemalok is another indigenous word, which is where Guatemala originated from. So there's indigenous roots and everything, but the internalized racism in the country is so big that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it. And I think a critical point is that a lot of us in Latin America are what they would call Métis here, of mixed heritage, mestizos, but we can't trace our roots because it's been so hidden. And so it's we out here floating, not really fully knowing our heritage. I could pass for weight. I don't look Guatemala. My people's short on average, and I look like the 8th of the world when I go back home. But my respect is there, and I feel a connection. I just can't identify it, and that's the case for so many of us. But we're ready to fight. We're ready to do what we need to defend our people. And man, I could go on and on.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I want to go back to talk more about your personal story and your journey.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I know before when we were talking, you mentioned how you traveled a lot, right? In your younger years. So how did you end up in Toronto? What led you all the way
So my mother's best friend was disappeared by the military. She was a doctor with the guerrillas back home in the city. So when combatants were injured, they'd be brought to her to treat them. And it was said during the war that for every one person that was directly involved, the government had 10 people around them tracked. My mother and her best friend had just received funding for a project to create a cooperative in an indigenous community where the men had been massacred by the military. And about a week after receiving the funding, my mother's best friend was disappeared by the military. She was also on the national softball team. She was leaving a practice and they threw her in a van, disappeared her for 10 days. During that time, there was a police car set up in the corner where we lived, and we had to leave. We had to leave overnight, so I found out on the day of my 11th birthday that we were going to become refugees. And as a result, we went to Costa Rica, we went to England, we landed in Canada. And prior to all of that experience, my mom had received a scholarship to Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville University. So that's where I learned English. So all those experiences during my childhood amounted to six elementary schools in 5 different countries.
Wow.
2 different languages.
Wow. And so what did that do for your upbringing, having to travel so much? Because those are the years where you really...
Formative years, yeah. For a long time, I felt like my childhood was stolen from me because of all this uncertainty that we were in, but I'm so thankful I had that experience because I think it's just defined me for who I am today. I feel very comfortable in different spaces. I feel very blessed. I've received a lot of love and support from within the Black community here in Toronto. That I could travel to go into Indigenous territory and oftentimes find myself as the only one of in a group of people. But I'm well rooted in who I am.
So you mentioned that you traveled a lot as a young person in your formative years, right? This is the time that you kind of build your foundation. So how was that like for you, having to go to how many schools and travel to how many countries?
I'm really thankful because I think it made me comfortable in a lot of different cultural spaces. I went on an exchange program to Jamaica. I was very comfortable down there. I was more at home in Jamaica than I was in the Canadian phase of the exchange, which was in PEI.
Wow.
I went through culture shock in PEI, but not Jamaica.
Wow.
Super white. I was just waiting for racialized people to pop out of something. Surprise, we're here. But yeah. And then a bunch of Japanese tourists for Anna Green Gables for some reason. But I feel that experience really made me feel comfortable and grounded in who I am. Also, I experienced discrimination. I remember when we first moved to England, my mother was trying to find me a school. No school was accepting me. My mother had an accent when she speaks. And I feel like there was a certain discrimination that she was going through because of that. And then when she finally found me a school, we had this racist white teacher, and she had all the Black students sitting at the back, and she had me sitting with them. Then she had all the white students at the front, and we were just fed up with this woman, and so in grade 6, I started a little revolt, and we all walked out. And I guess I had an understanding of social injustices as a result of that. When I went to Oakwood Collegiate, I was in the gifted classes, and I went through a lot of problems in grade 11, grade 12, and I ended up getting sent to the basic classes. And I observed that it went from all white to all Black. But those Black students to me were just as smart as the white kids in the class I was with. So I didn't understand why this was such a marked difference. And those Black students showed me so much love during my hard time. Nikki, she my baby sister. She took me to stay with. She took me in to stay with her. And I put my mother through hell, so she didn't know what to do with me. And so I was bouncing around home to home. But that experience in high school specifically, I think, really defined me moving forward and me understanding the social issues at hand and realizing the discrimination that's in place. Why is a whole group of students put in this class and they're just as intelligent? You know what I mean? And then why these punk ass kids not talking to me no more because I'm no longer in the gift or whatever. And I'm actually really thankful I went through all that because I'm very militant in my advocacy now. And I don't mince words, I don't bite my tongue. If there's things that need to be said, I'll be the first one to say it. I'll call out the white fragility, white supremacy, whatever needs to be called out. I have no hesitation in doing so, and I feel the fact that I carry white privilege makes it even more important for me to call it out when I see it. try to take that emotional labor off of the people that are victimized by it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really thankful for those experiences.
Mm-hmm. It seems like activism runs in your family.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
So do you feel that it was just like natural for you to be the way that you are? Like you naturally gained that through your family, or do you feel like your personal experiences led you to this?
I think it was definitely my personal experiences. Like I know seeing my mom suffer and seeing the foundation she laid for me when we were back home, you know, inadvertently. One thing I love her for, like when we were in Louisville, Kentucky, there was a lot of solidarity events. The Sandinista revolution was underway. The Reagan administration was trying to overthrow them with the Contra scandal, and there was a lot of solidarity events. I remember she brought me to a church, and they recreated a scene in a village where everyone was murdered, and they had me lay on the floor, and they traced chalk around me, and they did that for a bunch of other people. And that moment for me was really like, I mean, I was like 7 or 8. And I'm just so thankful to my mother for having me involved in that. Wow. Because, you know, you stand up and you see the outlines and you're like, these are people. Like, this is our people right now that's going through it. And so it really, it just defined me, you know. And I went through a lot of solitude when we ended up in Toronto, because a lot of people, I felt, a lot of Latinos just out there in the salsa clubs or whatever, but they weren't really caring about what was happening to our people. And that's why I wanted to do the interview here, because I love this space. The space is just revolution, unapologetically from start to finish. And I'm so thankful you were here to witness the open mic, because you felt the vibe yourself. And it's like, you know, my contribution to the cause. And right now we're going through it a lot. We're going through genocide in Bolivia, Ecuador, Chile, Colombia. Like there's a lot of evil afoot right now against our people and against the indigenous people specifically, but they fighting, we all fighting, and we're rising up. So yeah, it's time for me to start writing on that. Yeah,
man. Like you've done so much, and I feel like people watching, you might not know how many people are watching and actually learning, and I think that's the beauty of it as well. Because sometimes when people don't necessarily meet you or come to you or visit you or whatever, they're taking in everything that you're saying. And I think that's the beauty of social media as well. Because, you know, even if I don't message you, I'm like, I'm seeing this. You know, I'm doing my research. And I think maybe what can you say to people and social media? Because we already recognize that this whole Twitter finger thing where people are easy to come at you and say negative things, but aren't going to post about the challenges that are happening in these countries. So what can you tell people in terms of utilizing their social media or their presence in general or their voice?
I feel like every step counts. You know, the media, like the mass media, manipulates a lot of our opinions. You see, they're trying to overthrow Maduro's government in Venezuela, and so they skew the information and they put all these things out, and then we out here reposting it. We don't even know what the hell's going on over there, you know? And I'm for Chavez 100%. Maduro's not Chavez, but I'm still for the people in Venezuela. There's a lot of confusion that they're not sharing. And I find it very interesting that when they make, for example, Maduro look like the devil, but now you got in Bolivia, indigenous women getting assaulted for simply wearing their indigenous clothing because they're being referred to as supporters of Evo, who's also indigenous. You're essentially beating up women for wearing their traditional clothing. And where the hell's the media now? And so my advice to people when you see the injustices is get informed, put it out. There was a whole bunch of like Latino, like, you know, I don't want to name them, but they're out here posting little goofy things when the Venezuela thing was happening, and I started blasting them on social. I was going on their pages, blasting them, saying like, yo, you guys are buying into this. And some of them fell back, you know, some of them fell back, and I found it interesting because essentially what was happening when Maduro was being demonized, a video came out with Mike Pence encouraging the Venezuelans to overthrow Maduro. So I went out and I started sending that video to everybody saying like, you guys are like pushing Trump's administration right now. Like this is really who you're aligning yourself with, and that shut everybody up. So like be educated, don't worry. I think one of the best advice I got, you know, inadvertently was from Gary Vee, because he's like, just create content. Don't worry about the followers, don't worry about, especially these kids, like how many followers you got, how many subscribers you got. I got content is what I have, you know. I got content that goes back 10, 15 years that I can still perform today. People don't even realize, like, I was invited to, in Lawrence Heights, I love that community, to perform at a graduation. And I did a poem called Dreams Come True that I wrote like 17 years ago.
Wow.
These kids didn't know and they loved it. You know, so it's like focus on your content and have it stored and have it ready for dissemination. Eventually the followers will grow. I got like, my Instagram is private because my employer, you know, they snoop and they try to think they own you. So I keep my stuff private on Instagram, but I still have like 100 followers that I don't even know, so I haven't accepted them. You know, I have them on hold basically. And so it's counterintuitive to people, like, why would you do that? You want as many followers as possible, but it's like, I want quality.
Yeah.
And I want to know that we can actually, you know, work together, be like-minded. I ain't trying to be arguing on my own posts.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I put something out about Palestine and one of the homies went in on me and I'm like, yo, if you do this one more time, I'm blocking you. He did it, I blocked him. Like, I was like, yo, I'm not trying to negotiate anything on my timeline, on my use of social media. I have a public one for my business for Educator, so that one I'm more strategic with what I post there. But it's still very much unapologetically us. We're all about immigrant indigenous friendship. We got a whole youth squad within the group, and they're all doing their things. Glows just put out her book, The Hood Chronicles. Sahra Yusuf, this Muslim Somali sister, she just went up to represent us in Ottawa at a discussion around the Canadian government's anti-racism strategy. You know, we're all putting in work in different ways. We got Jade Malika, she's going to be performing on the 21st. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier about taking the baby steps. You know, I started this spoken word program. Jade was in it. Jade at the time was nervous to share the poem in a small space. Yeah. And now has like a band and is performing. And so the longevity is what's important. And just keep at it. I'm so glad you told me this because I don't even know I'm just doing my thing. Yeah. I don't know if people's watching me, if they're not watching me. I know that I'm trying to get that bag. I'm trying to get those blessings and bring it back to our people. Yeah, exactly. You know, and I want justice.
Exactly.
And I got haters out here, man. I made some mistakes over the years, which I've called myself in for and done my best to rectify. But there's people that will become uncomfortable when they see your light shining because theirs isn't. And so, I had a line in a poem that said, I refuse to dim my light to make you zombies comfortable. It's, I have purpose. I have massive purpose on this earth. I know the work that I'm doing. And I think the last thing I would share for people is don't stress over the haters. Just make sure you're doing your work and make sure your heart is clean. Because when I hear all the foul things that are being said, I'm just like, my heart's clean and I'm doing work. Like, what's this person doing? And I'm not gonna stop my work, which is benefiting a lot of people, and out of fear of what's being said or whatever. Like, I've made my mistakes, I've owned up to them, and I've moved forward from them. Yeah.
So if you could speak to your younger self, the one that was stressed, the one that was struggling, the one that lacked confidence or didn't really understand what this gift was, what would you say to them now?
Man, I would tell them to be responsible with the gift. I would tell them that it's okay to be angry, but to not hurt people with your anger. I tell him to think before he speaks. You know, I said a lot of stupid things over the years that I wish I could take back. And I tell him to be mindful of the toxic masculinity. You know, this young men, I feel, think that they have something to prove. And the way that they prove it is through violence, is through like predatory behavior, is like through how many women they can have sex with, is all these things. And that's not the point. I was just having dinner with a young brother and he was telling me about all these fights and this and that, and I let him talk, and then when he finished I was like, none of that impresses me, man. And he just kind of looked at me. I was like, what impresses me is your aspirations to become an entrepreneur. What impresses me is when you tell me you have mental health issues and you need to work through them. That's what impresses me. All this other stuff is foolishness. That's what I would have told myself. You know, none of that matters, and you're gonna regret a lot of these actions and behaviors and decisions. Yeah, and keep at it.
Yeah.
Like just keep at it.
Wow. Oh my my gosh, so powerful, man. I remember I kept messaging him like, yo, your stuff is powerful, you are power, you are power. But okay.
I feel the same way about you. Like I'm watching your posts and everything, it inspires me, man.
No, so okay, in regards to inspiration, right? And this show is called You Are Power. My radio show is called You Are Power. The series will be called You Are Power. What is power to you?
Wow.
And how do you internalize that power?
Power. Huh. I feel like having inner peace is power. I feel like being yourself unapologetically is power as long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you have a clean heart. I feel like speaking up for the oppressed is power. But also like knowing your social location and all that. You know, it's I got my voice and I can tell my story, but if I can get these youth up on the stage to tell theirs, that's 10 times more power. You know, I feel like the biggest source of power is sharing that power out. You know, a lot of people want to amass the power or hoard it, and that's not good. I had an elder that had a posted that said corruption from power comes as no surprise. And that always resonated with me. And I had read this other phrase that said, I spent so long thinking of my oppressor that I've become him.
Wow.
So I feel like having integrity is power. You know, I've been in a lot of fights this past year, and I was done dirty, I was snaked, and I was furious, and I actually started meditating as a result. Meditation is power. So it taught me to separate thought from emotion. So I was in a lot of situations where I was like, this is a setup right now. Like this, I'm being set up right now. And the first instinct before, when I hadn't evolved, was anger. And this time around was strategy. It's like, okay, you're being set up. They let you down, they snaked you. Get over it and think quickly. What's happening? What's the goal? What are they trying to do? How are you gonna handle it? And it became like a chess game. And you know, I shared a lot of this with my mother, and it meant the world to me because she just told me how proud she was of me to know that I have integrity and that I'm not succumbing to the pressures I'm undergoing. So I was in different situations where I had to fight people damn nearly on a daily basis, but I did it with integrity. There was low blows that I could have thrown that could have made their life complicated, and I chose not to, even though they would have done it to me. And I feel like wicked hearts never prosper, you know, and I'm seeing the results of it now. I feel really blessed this year, to be honest with you, and I'm so thankful to be able to do this interview with you, because it's like, yeah, I feel like I share that story. I'm well grounded in who I am. Finally.
That's how it goes, though. It's a journey, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty of it, and I that's something I want to remind my younger siblings, that like, you don't have to have it all together by the age of 25, because you think at 30 you have to be married and all of these other things that society tells you that you need. But it's just recognizing that, like, regardless of what you go through, to continue to persevere. And I think you've proven that. And of course, you have your own thing that you want to continue to push forward to, or you want to accomplish. But no, I see the strength in everything that you've accomplished. From, you know, you mentioned that you've been through cancer.
Yeah, I'm a cancer survivor.
Cancer survivor. You mentioned, you know, your journey fighting through the Civil War in your country, traveling, the troubles that you experienced here as a teen, even what you just said about getting snaked. You're still here, you're pushing, you're doing the work, and I think that's all that matters.
For sure.
So, in closing, what's one word, phrase, or, I don't know, quote that you could send out to people as something that represents you?
Wow. Just like that.
It could be a word, like, and it's you right now. Like, it could change tomorrow, it could change however
you know what I would say? I would say dreams come true.
Dreams come true.
I would say, yeah.
And why?
Because you work at them and you deserve them, and never, ever undervalue yourself. You know, like, sometimes you'll meet someone, you'll be like, oh my gosh, this person's incredible. But then you're forgetting you're incredible. And now that person's on a pedestal, and now you're loaning yourself out to be taken for granted. So know your worth, definitely, but also know that dreams come true. For some people, they want that relationship or that family life. that was a dream deferred for me, but I feel like it's within reach, and I know I deserve it. But most importantly for me, also is having that inner peace. That my inner peace reigns supreme over everything. So I would say work towards your inner peace, know your worth, and know that dreams come true.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you. This is a blessed interview. Again, this is Spin, and it's your girl, Dobijoki Emanuela.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.
Much love to y'all.
Hey.